What's up, guys? At O'Hare Airport, headed to Phoenix. 3-hour flight. We got lots of snow here. Happy to get out of here to Arizona. Beautiful. Come on along, let's go. Hey there, gang, back with you. We're at the Commemorative Air Force Museum at a place called Falcon Field. It's in Phoenix, and just checking the place out, and it's got some really cool history. The field, the airport itself was actually established before World War II. And there was this Hollywood producer named Leland Hayward, and he got together with this pilot, and they got some of the buddies together, just some friends like Henry Fonda, Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers, Jimmy Stewart, and a couple of other people, and they were the backers behind this place. And next thing you know, they established the airport and the field and started Southwest Airways. Not a bad start. I wonder if that's Southwest Airlines now. So the first thing you see on the front lawn on this beautiful sunny day are these propellers. Those are from B-29 Super Fortresses. But then you go to the front and you've got this big 3-inch gun, which you can see here in World War I. They go that far back as single, and they were modified and developed and then used on all kinds of ships. This particular one at the museum was on the USS Guam, and it would shoot 50 rounds per minute of these 3-inch shells. It's hard to imagine how much firepower this was. So moseying around the museum to start, just picking out a few things. This is the Douglas A-26 Invader, and it did get its start in World War II. It was a twin-engine light bomber, but not real popular. The engines were positioned so big it was, it couldn't get visibility for ground attacks, and definitely something not to be confused. Looks similar in a way to the Martin B-26 Marauder, which has a whole story of its own, but none of those here. So moving along, now this is one of my favorites, the Lockheed Vega, a real famous airplane and flown by a lot of famous people. Check out this engine, this radial engine, 450 horsepower in the end in the later years, just like my de Havilland Beaver. But Amelia Earhart flew this, Wiley Post. One of the challenges was the forward visibility and tough to get a feel on attitude in landing, but it was known in the day as the Speed Demon. It did transcontinental flights, broke a lot of records, and it was an effective passenger plane of the time. Very few are left. This is I don't know if this one is flying or just a static display, but it's in beautiful shape. And as we go down here and look in the interior, it is well detailed. In fact, they have in the back, if you take a close look, looks like Howard Hughes might have been sitting here. So it gave me a nice warm nostalgic feeling. Of course, here's the P-51 Mustang. We don't have to say much about that. And there it is, the TBM Avenger with the folding wings. You can get a scale of how big this thing is with the guys up there and walking around. Well, it's kind of bittersweet to look at this bird in the hangar here. So moving to the outside hangar in the back, we see a T-6 trainer, beautiful blue, and swinging around to the right. What else but the immortal B-17 bomber. And this particular aircraft that we see here has really cool nose art. This Flying Fortress has the nose art of Betty Grable, who of course was the #1 pinup girl in World War II, and the aircraft takes the namesake after a song that was made popular by Doris Day, Sedimental Journey, in 1945. And that was the year, actually in late 1944 is when this Douglas aircraft was accepted by the U.S. Army Air Forces, and was assigned to the Pacific Theater for the short duration thereafter of the war, and then it was placed in storage in Japan. Put this contest out to name the aircraft, and they got 800 entries, and the ultimate selection was Sedimental Journey with the nose art featuring Betty Grable. And what was cool, I think the coolest thing is permission was secured from the widower, Harry James, to be able to add Betty Grable in her most tantalizing pose, it is said. And there it is, and it's a beautiful, beautiful airplane. And when I was here, they had one of the engines off, and it had blown a cylinder, and I took a look at that, and you know, it it happens, and believe me, I know it. So then, just adjacent to the B-17, right outside, we see the venerable B-25, another probably top famous aircraft of World War II, attack bomber. Of course, most famous from the Doolittle raid. That was the raid off the Hornet, the USS Carrier, after Pearl Harbor, kind of the first little strike back. So for those of you that are pretty much just into the aircraft stuff and World War II, etc., this is a little bonus footage of going to a gold mining ghost town called the Vulture Mine in Wickenburg. So if you're only in airplanes, bail out now. No pun intended. But the rest of you that like gold rush and gold mining and history, you can stick around, because we're going through the gates of the Vulture City Vulture Mine. Hey, near Phoenix, Arizona here, a place called Wickenburg, Arizona. And it's called the Vulture Mine. The Vulture Mine, back in the, I don't even know when it was, but some old man Wickenburg was out here in a depressed mood, and I guess they saw a vulture and was throwing some rocks at it, and one of the rocks hit
sparked. He walked over and found some gold. So this is where the old mine location is. They're still pulling gold out of here today, from what I understand. So have to go check it out.
This story is about a man named Johannes Henricus Wickenburg, Henry Wickenburg. And he's the guy that found this Vulture Mine, which we'll talk about. And it developed into this big city, which is now Wickenburg, Arizona. But it was a pretty sad story because he kind of got jinxed out of his mine over time, and he died penniless. In 1905, Henry's body was discovered with a single gunshot wound to the head. Suicide? No one knows for sure. Walking through this ghost town was really eerie. It was like going in a time machine. Everything was as it was back in 1863 when the mine was started. Was it really a vulture that he saw, that he threw a rock at? Is that how he discovered the mine? Of course, that's a myth, and we'll be talking about that.
This is the head shaft that they actually relocated to this area. It was at the head of one of the shafts that went down. There you see the ore bucket on wheels, on rails. Heavy timber, cast iron, and would come down these rails. Pulley system, so the cable would go around these. Looks to be an engine over here that would run this pulley system. Look at that, there's just one cylinder, one huge cylinder.
It grew into a town of 5,000 people in its heyday, this little Vulture Mine area. But really at the very beginning, it was really Henry Wickenburg just noticing a quartz ledge. It was about 14 miles from the group's camp, but none of the guys would listen to him. They were too busy investigating their own claims. This is one of the main buildings of the little town. It was included the assay office, which we see here. This is where they would process and evaluate the gold. You can see the bellows there and the fire where they melt the ore, and of course before that crush the rock. And there's just a series of rooms here. Here are where the samples were kept and stored. And we go down the hallway here outside, and very interesting on the left here, we make our way into this vault. And nothing much in there, but in the center is a hole in the floor. And this was the secure way that they would protect the gold bars. In fact, this was like the safe. And I'm not sure these bars were here back then that we see, but there's a ladder going down, and if you look real close, there's some fool's gold down there. You can see all the original construction, adobe, the stone, the wood beams, just as it was. Some of this was reconstructed, but most of it is original. So we step back outside and we turn to our left and we approach this corridor. We go in and we see this is the kitchen and dining area. and quite spacious. And as we look down here to our left, there's a fireplace. And what was interesting is it was really heavily fortified. Everything was really thick. Now here upstairs, this is where the guards would be, the shotgun guards. And that's where they would sleep. And they had many lawmen here at the time, of course, being so remote with all this gold. And I think, this was the assayer's office where a lot of the samples were analyzed, further refined. You can see core samples here, just as it was. Well, of course, what town wouldn't be complete without the brothel, the ladies of the night? Well, in those days, they were called the ladies of the line, or they'd call them sporting women. And sometimes the cowboys would call them soiled doves. But anyway, they were all the same. Well, it was the 1860s and prostitution was a booming business back then. That was probably the height of it. And although it was illegal, it was pretty much impossible to suppress. So they kind of looked the other way and tried to keep it confined to parlors and brothels like this. I'm guessing it's not by coincidence that there's a doctor's office connected to this. And if you look to the left, there's actually a birthing table. And I'm sure it was used as a surgical table too. But anyway. Was this the church, or was this the courtroom where many men were convicted? That is the question. Maybe they were both. This, we do know, was Henry Wickenburg's little cabin, just as it was, but in a very dubious place.